part in the company of the upright in the congregation. Great are the works of the Lord, studied by all who delight in them. Full of honor and majesty is his work, and his righteousness endures forever. He has gained renown by his wonderful deeds. The Lord is gracious and merciful. He provides food for those who fear him. He is ever mindful of his covenant. He has shown his people the power of his works and giving them the heritage of the nations. The works of his hands are faithful and just. All his precepts are trustworthy. They are established forever and ever, to be performed with faithfulness and uprightness. He sent redemption to his people. He has commanded his covenant forever. Holy and awesome is his name. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All who practice it have a good understanding. His praise endures forever. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Heavenly Father, we come here this morning, God, and we're going to hear words. And God, we just pray that you give Jeremy those words, and that what we hear is what you want us to hear. What we take away and we meditate upon is what we can share and let others know of the good you've done. Amen. So I promised you a few weeks ago, as Scripture tells us to do, we're going to get to hear testimony. And a little introduction for Jeremy. Jeremy and I have been friends. Well, Jeremy was senior leader, well, not senior leader, he was one of the older guys in 4-H when I got into 4-H. His sister was in my middle sister's class. He was my flag football coach. And then he was one of the guys that made sure that we had a football legacy to go into when I got into high school. And then he also tried to give me some of the greatest advice I ever ignored. I got invited by Tabor College to come and watch them play Mac College, where Jeremy was in his senior year. And was it your final game? I think, yeah, it was final game. And Tabor was not on the good end of that game. It was 72-0 at the end of that game. And Jeremy and my cousin who played for McPherson came over, and they're like, I really want to play for them. We went 7-2 my freshman year. It was a much better. Coach McCarthy was awesome. But I've known Jeremy for a lot of years. Side by side, we coached the boys. Most of the football stories you hear that involve me coaching Troy's team involves his son Wyatt was on those same exact teams, and then later on he asked me to come back and help coach his younger son Deacon, who's a junior now in high school, and sophomore. That's right. He acts older. He's a good kid.
Don't age us.
So, in Mark 5, which you see up on the screen now, there's this moment where Jesus is getting off a boat, he's preaching, and there's a gentleman who has been living in the mountains for a while. He can't be around other people. He tries to be tethered by chains, and he breaks through those chains because he's possessed. He's not leading an easy life at all. He's bashing himself with stones. He has gotten to the point of where he is harming himself a lot. But he sees Jesus getting onto the shore, and he runs to him and prays to him and gives him thanks and praise and says, Jesus, heal me. Jesus commands the demons, legion, to leave him. And this is the fun one. If you ever need to stump a youth group and say, okay, which one of these situations happened in the Bible? A host of demons jumped into a herd of pigs and they ran off of a cliff. Or then just make up any other story you want. And they're going to leave that herd of pigs alone. They don't ever choose that one. Unless there's one kid in the group that has read their scriptures. Then that one ruins it for you. But that happened. And then after the celebration and the teaching Jesus gave, because people saw who this guy was, knew what was going on in his life, they listened. And then when they're done, Jesus is approached by this man again, and he says, Jesus, let me go with you. But Jesus refused him and said to him, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you. didn't say, okay, join right in, you can walk in the back. He said, no, you need to go out, you need to share what I have done for you. You need to let others know so that way their life is changed too. We go through a lot of Sunday mornings where I share some other people's testimony or things that have happened in my own life. But today, Jeremy is willing to stand up and share what has gone on in his life. And so I thank you very much for that show. And I invite you, pulpit, or that microphone. Okay. We have some people that would really appreciate it.
Or you want a wireless one? You want a wireless one, would be better.
Can I get that? Should have planned that one better. Sorry, guys.
I will tell you that I haven't stood up in front of a group and talked since I was in 4-H. So you guys are gonna my guinea pigs, and you're gonna have to bear with me here a little bit. So, and I didn't prepare anything. We're just kind of winging it. So, my name is Jeremy Showalter. I am a farmer, so I can relate to what was said earlier. I asked Tom how much time I had to speak, and he said 15 minutes. I'm like, well, I can speak for 2 hours, so I guess we'll kind of condense it down a little bit. I guess we'll kind of start at the beginning for the reason that I'm here. In October, well, this is October, it would have been on the 19th. Me and my wife would have been married for 20 years. Going back to when I was young, I'll give you a little background on me. My parents are divorced. They were divorced when I was 10. I really didn't have a lot of... I can equate me going into marriage as like you were studying for a math test and you ended up taking a science test. Okay? So what I was getting into, I really knew nothing about because I really didn't have anything to kind of go off of when I was young. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents on their farm. My grandfather was a good influence in my life, and when he passed away, it's been 4 years ago coming up, it kind of threw me in for a loop. I really never dealt with any of that, with losing him. It kind of threw my life into a bad spot. But it threw me into that spot because growing up and looking back on myself in my life, which I've been doing a lot of lately, I see a counselor. I have for the last year. She is very good. She is faith-based. She will call you out on your BS if she thinks you're trying to pull one over on her. And we have done a lot of reflecting on what's going on in my life since I was young. And to kind of shorten it down a little bit, I realized now that when I was growing up, there was a hole inside me. And I didn't like who I was. I didn't like what I saw. I was in the mirror. I did a lot of things to try to cover that up. I didn't deal with my emotions like I do now. I just kind of kept them bottled up. I never talked to anybody. I really never asked for anybody's advice or help. But I knew there was a hole inside me, and I tried to fill that hole with the things I shouldn't have been filling it with. I would lie. I learned when I was young that I was good at lying and manipulating. Like I could stand next to a house that was burnt down with a gas can and wouldn't get in trouble. Let's put it that way. I knew how to talk my way out of things. I knew how to manipulate. And I used that in my marriage as I got older. My wife was an angel who was sent to me. I think this went off. Yeah, it's whatever. I can talk. My wife was an angel who was sent to me 20 years ago because God was nudging me, saying, "You need some help. You need some help," and He sent her to me. And I didn't realize it. And if you could if you could pick anything other than physical abuse and probably some verbal abuse that I did to her, I did it. I lied to her, I cheated on her, I didn't include her in my farming decisions, I didn't respect her opinion. She is one of the strongest women that I know for putting up with that for almost 20 years. And she did. And I finally told her about 2 years ago, because she didn't know I cheated on her. And I finally told her a couple of years ago that I had. And we started going to counseling. And while we were going to counseling, I was still talking to another girl while we were in counseling, and she found out about it, and that was the end of it for her. She filed for divorce and said, I'm done. And that was another time that God thumped me on the head and said, you know what, you can't keep doing this. You know, I sent you one already, Angel, and I see what you did with that, and so we're going to try this method, I guess. And so she filed for divorce about a year ago, and we got to go into, I go see a counselor. It's the same one that she sees. We don't go together. She actually recommended her to me, and I believe there are 5 angels in my life right now. My 3 kids, who are freshman in college, sophomore in high school, 8th grader, my ex-wife, and Alexa, my counselor. Because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here doing this. You know, we went back and looked at some of the things that I was doing, and she basically said that I was in she calls it a shame spiral. So if you do, what that means is, like, if you do something wrong, you're doing something else wrong to make you forget about what you did wrong here, and then, so now you've done 2 things wrong, so it just kind of works its way down. And so I was pretty much doing everything I should have been doing to try to cover up how I was feeling inside. I just didn't realize that there was that hole inside of me was the fact that God was not in my heart. I went to church, I did all that kind of stuff. I was talking at God, but I was not talking to Him. When I would pray to Him, I was asking Him to do things for me. Okay, so I would say like, you know, God, please help me. It'd be so like if you say like, God, please help me lose weight as you're eating a cheeseburger, you know, it doesn't really work. I was not asking God to give me the strength for me to do the work I need to do. I was asking Him to do the work for me. I'd say, please help, you know, my ex-wife see that I'm a better person. Well, I'm not asking Him to do that. I need to do that. Okay? I need to show her that I am not the same person that I was. I need to show other people that I am not the same person that I was. I need to put in the work, not God. And once I figured that out, that was about the first part of July. And I remember I was sitting on the couch at my grandparents' house where I live now. And there was a picture on the wall of Jesus holding His hands like this. And I just looked over at that picture, and something just told me that, I just basically got down on my knees and said, I need your help. I need your help. I'd never asked before, you know. I had, but not in the right manner, I guess, was what I'm saying. And we talked for a little bit, and it was probably 2 or 3 days later, I was sitting there on the couch, and I couldn't find my wedding ring because I got mad at myself after we got divorced, and I basically said, I don't deserve this, and I took it off, and I put it somewhere. I don't remember where I put it. And it took me about 2 minutes, and I found it. And, you know, that's when I kind of knew. I was like, you know, He's got me on a path that I have to work to stay on. And what I am doing for the previous, I'm 45, so for the previous say 30 years when I was really aware of what was going on, I was on the easy path. I was on the easy path, and I'm not anymore. I know that from now and for how many days I have left, it's this path that I'm on will be the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. Because I have to be a better person for myself, for my kids, for everybody that, I called people that work for me. I usually have 2 or 3 employees. And I called some of the people that had worked for me before, and I apologized to them and told them I was sorry for how I treated them, because I was not treating them the way they should have been treated. I apologize to a lot of people. Because, looking back, the person that I was is not who God intended me to be, and not who I wanted to be. And it's been, my counselor said, when we got through everything and we were determining how she was going to treat me moving forward, she said, do you want me to treat you as if we want to move past your marriage, or to try to to try to patch your marriage back up if possible? And I said, without hesitation, that's what I wanted to do. And she told me, she said, this will be the hardest thing you've ever done, because you will be rejected. You're going to have a lot of emotional pain that you're going to have to deal with. And I said, that's fine. I'm game. I said, but if the path that God has me on, and the path that has my ex-wife on, don't cross, then so be it. But I have to walk this path to see if that happens, or if nothing else, to be a better person for me and for everybody else. And, the children's time, when you talked about talking to somebody, you're not alone when you have God, because you're not. I was alone for a long time, and now I realize that I am not, and I can always talk to Him when I need to. And I talked to Him a lot. I talked to Him on the way over here. I said, please give me some words. Help me. I've never done this before, and I want to be able to, if nothing else, if somebody else sees me or hears what I say, maybe I can help them not be the person that I, get them out of the situation that I was in. Because if I would have had God in my life from the get-go, I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't be in this situation. But, you can't go back and change the past. You have to start where you're at and work for the future. And that's what I'm trying to do. This hole that's inside of me has changed from the fact that God is not there to the fact that now my family is not there. And so I am leaning on God that I can patch that hole, and I can be who I want to be. I can show my kids that just because you are one way doesn't mean that you have to stay that way. And there's so much stuff I want to say, and I know Tom's going to shut me off. But we didn't communicate very well, and I'm not going to get into her deal, but there was, we didn't communicate. We never argued because we didn't communicate. I would say something or do something, and she wouldn't push back on me, so I just assumed that it was okay. That was a lot of what was going on there, aside from the extramarital stuff. But there was a lot of that went on as far as the communication and stuff goes. And I tell you, we talked about the 2 people up by Lorraine that committed suicide. I knew one of them pretty well, and I really feel that if he would have talked to somebody, if he would have talked to God, because I can tell you that I don't understand I don't get the suicide thing, but I understand what goes through people's minds now. After this divorce deal and stuff, I mean, I would think that, like, you know, well, nobody needs me, I'm not doing anybody any good, you know, kind of stuff. I understand, I do. But if you have God in your life and in your heart, then you're not alone. You know, because I was lonely. I was lonely my whole life, and I didn't realize that I was. I had my wife, my kids, everything I thought it was, but no, I was still lonely. I was still lonely because I didn't have him in my heart. And, you know, like I said, it will be a struggle for me every day to keep him there, because there's always going to be temptation and everything else to try to push him out. So it is a struggle. It is a struggle. And one last thing, when you were talking about who you'd want to meet, a famous person you'd want to meet, and mine, he's not alive anymore. His name's Jim Valvano. He was the coach of the North Carolina State basketball team. He died of cancer in 1993, I believe. Does anybody know who Jim Valvano is? Jimmy V? Okay, he gave a real famous speech at the ESPYs probably 2 months before he died. And one of the things he said was, if you do 3 things every day, if you bring yourself to tears, if you spend time in thought, and if you laugh, if you do those 3 things every day, you will have a full day. And trust me, I've done a lot. I maybe haven't laughed as much as I should have in the last, 6 months or whatever. But I've spent a lot of time in thought, and I've cried every day. Some of them are good cries, some of them are cries because, I'm sad and I'm upset. And, but if you do those 3 things, you're going to have yourself a full day, trust me. And, if you don't think that something can be changed, if you think that you are in a rut, if you think that, this is just the way it's going to be, or if somebody says, oh, your dad was that way, or whatever, that's wrong. You don't have to be who you are because of who somebody else is. If you talk to him, he will listen. He will give you what you need. He won't put anything in front of you that you can't handle. Even though it may seem like it's a lot, in my case I think it is. If he didn't think I could handle it, he wouldn't put it in front of me. If he didn't think I could stand up here and do this, he wouldn't have told me that this is what I needed to do. So, that's all I'm going to say. I appreciate you guys listening to me, and I appreciate Tom letting me come up here and do this. And if anybody wants to ask me anything after church, I'll be around. So, thank you guys.
In the psalm that we read, it says, I celebrate joy with the congregation. I think there's no greater joy than seeing someone have that moment when they really come to their relationship with God. And one of the things that I share with most everybody that I talk to when we're going into a situation we're trying to figure out how to continue after something has happened in your life is remember, and it's a 90s saying, remember that you've got this t-shirt. You can go to the closet, you can grab it, and you can say, hey, I've been there, done that, and I've got the shirt, and you can share it with someone. Because one of the greatest things that we're called to do is to testify. The Apostle Paul spent the majority of his life after having that moment with Christ, testifying about what Christ had done for him, done in him. and he talked about the wound all the time. He'd done these things in his life that he definitely was not proud of. But that moment with Christ changed him in such a way that those around him benefited so much. We're here today in this moment because God shared the gospel through him, and he was willing to go and share and testify on that behalf. So thank you, Jeremy. I really, really mean that. If you stand and join me in singing the Lord of the Dance, number 261.